Stranded in the middle of the ocean, this woman did the impossible in order to survive. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to Did You Know and hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. When it comes to the human spirit, there's nothing as strong or as unshakable. Despite what life might hurl your way, the spirit's natural instinct is to survive and overcome no matter what the cost. In October of 1983, 23-year-old Tammy Oldham Ashcraft would find herself fighting for survival against almost impossible odds. As her life and everything she knew scattered to the winds, she would have to dig deep down inside to find the will to fight on. And despite a grim outlook, Tammy refused to succumb to the darkness, discovering something worth living for amongst the wreckage of her reality. On the morning of October 13, 1983, Tammy woke to the sound of water splashing on the hull of a boat. Waking for the first time in over 24 hours, she was completely disoriented and unaware of how she got on the boat to begin with. Even worse, there was 3 feet of water below deck. What had happened? Stumbling onto the deck, Tammy was alarmed at the poor condition of the Seacraft. The main mast was gone, there were no sails, and she was in the middle of the ocean, which spread around for miles. Even more alarming, her sailing partner was missing. It had only been weeks before that Tammy and her sailing partner were enjoying the warm waters of the South Pacific. Tammy, a California native, and Richard, her British fiancé, had spent 6 months sailing around Fiji. It had been a magical trip, and the couple had spent those months planning the rest of their lives together. While the couple had enjoyed pleasure cruising around on Richard's 36-foot sailboat, the couple decided to put that life on hold when they were hired to sail and deliver a luxury yacht from Tahiti to its new owner in San Diego. Between Tammy and Richard, they had over 50,000 combined logged hours of experience. It was the perfect job, one that Tammy and her fiancé planned down to the last detail. The trek would take 30 days, but they were up for the challenge. The couple set sail in late September, and the weather was absolutely perfect. The skies were a stunning cerulean blue, and the sailing conditions were beyond perfect for sailing a luxury yacht. Unfortunately, both Tammy and Richard had no idea they were sailing straight towards an absolute nightmare. 7 days into their trip, Tammy and Richard were notified of a tropical depression forming off Central America. Realizing they needed to avoid the storm at all costs, they rerouted north with the hopes of staying away from the storm. Unfortunately, Tammy and Richard's change in route was not enough to outrun the storm. On October 12, 3 weeks into their trip, the couple sailed straight into a Category 4 hurricane. With winds of 160 miles per hour and waves over 50 feet high, the yacht was tossed around like a toy. When the wind's howling that hard, it's picking up spray right off the top of the water. There's so much spray you can hardly see anything. It's like being in a blizzard, said Tammy, recalling the nightmarish events. To keep the yacht from sinking was almost impossible. After hours of work against the odds, Richard demanded that Tammy get below deck to watch the barometer and try to get some rest. According to Tammy, the last thing she remembered was Richard's terrifying scream before he was knocked unconscious as the boat capsized. The yacht was tossed in the air, rolling over and over before being dropped from a trench in the enormous waves. Tammy would wake up 27 hours later, happy to be alive, but finding herself completely alone. Despite being grateful for surviving, the horror that Richard was nowhere to be found quickly set in. The only evidence of Richard's presence was his safety line drifting in the water. It had been completely severed. As if being alone at sea wasn't bad enough, Tammy discovered that the mast was gone. The engine and electronics were no longer functioning, and she had a limited supply of food and water. The only light in the darkness was that the rudder was still working, and she could possibly determine the direction of the yacht. According to Tammy, she thought of giving up several times during her first 2 days alone at sea. She refused to eat or drink, the sadness of losing Richard being almost too much to take. However, something happened that sparked a flame in the darkness, giving her hope to continue on. Tammy recalls hearing a voice telling her she had to continue on. She then began to recall how to craft a makeshift sail. Rummaging through the wreckage, Tammy was able to find enough materials to cobble together a sail that would help her navigate the waters. Unfortunately, she would only be able to sail at a slow 2.5 miles per hour. Without any of the electronics working, it was almost impossible for Tammy to determine which direction to steer the yacht. Thankfully, she had some old-school gadgets to help her navigate. Using an old sailor's tool called a sextant, Tammy was able to determine her position by comparing the angle of the sun and the horizon. However, one false calculation and she'd be lost forever. As Tammy slowly sailed her way across the great blue expanse, she was overwhelmed with sorrow. The loss of her fiancé Richard was heavy on her heart, and at times she thought of just giving up. However, she continued to hear Richard's voice whispering 1 second at a time, and that's what she did, day after day, night after night. After 41 days at sea and traveling a staggering 1,500 miles, Tammy finally made landfall in Hawaii. All of her perseverance and a strong will to survive paid off. However, Tammy revealed that as time went on, she was once again consumed with despair. The survival part was over, and now she was faced with the reality of spending the rest of her life without Richard. Today, Tammy has moved on with her life, fallen in love, and even had a child. Recently, she wrote a memoir about the events she experienced titled Red Sky and Morning, which has been turned into a motion picture premiering this summer. In the end, Tammy had this to say about the experience. "I had always wanted to write it. I couldn't believe how much I was still holding around in my head, and just purging it like that really helped me to get past it all."